We're going to bring y'all into our huddle.
Today's Monday, November 25th, 2013, and you are in the Warriors Huddle with me, Bram. With me, as always, my boy, producer Scott.
Scott here.
Scotty, Warriors just went through their first fairly rough patch of the season, so you know we got big things to talk about, buddy. In the Warriors update, we're going to go through the last 4 games and decide whether this recent rash of nasty injuries and shitburger play should make us worried about the War at all. And then in a fairly special return to WTH, one we've been talking about for months now, we're going to try to figure out what the hell are the top 5 greatest hoop video games of all time. But first, man, a little bit of housekeeping. Let's do Uber quickly. They are our lone sponsor. They are also my favorite application for the iPhone. If you do not feel like looking for a cab or getting the cash to pay for it, download Uber, press a button, and they come to you. Any Uber stories recently, Scotty?
No.
Will you start just making them up?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that, man.
Next week,
Perfect.
I'm on it.
Something big. I mean, like, whatever you want. Involve an alien abduction. I mean, follow Baron Davis. Just go large on that, all right?
I'll try to do that, but I just wanted to keep things real brief on the Uber front because the season's now starting to get interesting. This is when it starts to get fun.
You don't feel like spending time talking about a company that hasn't really done that much for us?
No, I know that you do.
I sure do. All right. The only real housekeeping I had was picking up a topic you and I discussed last week. We used the Matt Barnes Clipper Thunder fight as an excuse to ask the question, should you ever have to fight for a teammate? And you and I both kind of unanimously agreed that you shouldn't. I thought about it. And, I as much as I am not a fighter at all by nature, I think that there have to be some circumstances when you're actually willing to throw blows in the maybe not in the course of the game, but to support a teammate.
So what would you put in those?
I'm thinking real extreme situations. Again, I'm still, I'm not going to go in there and just sock somebody in the face because they've pushed somebody unnecessarily or they're talking shit. Those types of things I couldn't give less of a fuck about. But if you're looking at a situation, let's say like Malice in the Palace, not against fans, but if you are a part of a team that now finds itself in an open riot, there's people coming after you, you're totally outnumbered, you have a teammate getting jumped or something along those lines in front of you, I do think you have some kind of an obligation to put your body on the line, go in there and fight for that guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Because I always hesitate to put an always on something. Yeah. You should always do this or you always shouldn't do that. And so there's always going to be exceptions.
Yeah.
Catch that?
Yeah, I did. I got that. Thanks. Yeah.
But
you want to run it back to me and I can laugh this time, or?
Yeah, you seem kind of starry-eyed doing that.
I just got it, man. I just got it, and that was great.
Blank expression. But I do think that you're right. It especially gets into times where it borders on self-defense.
Right.
And that's where you're starting to go with that.
Because there's a certain us versus them mentality, especially when you go on the road. And if someone's getting their ass kicked in front of you and they're a part of the us as opposed to them, I do think that, you have some obligation to go help them out. Now, before we go too far and I make myself sound like some kind of a badass, let me tell you another random story. Did you follow this Bat Kid thing at all out here in San Francisco?
Very tangentially. I saw some headlines, but I tried not to get too deep into it.
Yeah, I'm more impressed with your word tangentially than I am with your use of the always in that last kind of ironic phrase for you. Well, the Bat Kid thing, this kid, 8-year-old kid, has leukemia, joins the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and what he wants to do is be Bat Kid for a day. So the city of San Francisco invites him in.
Great wish, by the way.
It's fairly awesome, and instead of just giving him a costume and taking some pictures and calling it a day, the city and the city of San Francisco, the county of Alameda, in fact, pretty much all of the Bay Area got behind this kid, and they ended up going huge. They faked a woman getting kidnapped by the Penguin and tied up to cable car tracks, had this kid come down in a car that looked exactly like the Batmobile, and then they had all these spectators who were already there, something like 20,000 people cheering him on. I mean, they had all these things. I
was really worried about that day leading up to it, actually, because that's just a real big day for a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I worried like they had these things set up, and maybe after the first one he gets a little stage fright or he's just tired at that point.
But it sounds like he attacked the entire thing, but the logistics aren't what I want to draw our attention to. I just want to combat any thought that I am somewhat of a man after telling you that I actually liked fighting or would fight in some circumstance. So this thing goes off without a hitch. It's going really well, becomes national news. In fact, it makes my wife's favorite morning show, Good Morning America. So Erica calls me up in the morning and says, hey, come take a look at this. And I'm working out at the time, and I'm all pissy that she's giving me shit and is, getting me into the room and stopping my workout. So I go in there, and I'm annoyed, like, I don't care about this at all. And I stop talking and start watching this segment. By the end of it, after they'd shown everything they did for the back end, I'm like sobbing, Scotty. Like I trying to dry my eyes. I'm telling her, it got dusty in here. It got dusty. So, lest you think in any way that my last comment made me a badass, I was sobbing to Good Morning America not 4 days ago. So it is.
I didn't think that. So that whole story was worthless.
All right, fair enough. And go fuck yourself. Let's move on, baby, and let's get into the Warriors update and start with our past scores and current standings. 4 games since our last podcast. November 18th, 98-87 win over Utah in Utah, and then the losing started, buddy. November 20th, 88-81 loss to Memphis. That was an overtime game that we lost at home. November 22nd, 102-95 loss to Los Angeles in Los Angeles, that being the Lakers, not the Clippers. And on November 23rd, 113-101 loss to Portland at home. After a 1-3 4-game stretch, we are now 8-6, 7th in the West, a full 4.5 games behind first place Utah. Good news, though, Mark with a C. Stein was not that upset. He moved us down 1 spot, so we've been bouncing back and forth. We bounced back down to 7th in the power rankings, so not all is poor.
Yeah, well, I mean, his rankings must take into account injuries, so he knows that this is somewhat of a fluke 1-3.
You still buying into it?
Yeah, oh gosh, man, these I live and die by these.
Let's talk Utah win, man, especially since it's the only one that we get to talk about through this podcast. Like I said, 98-87 win over Utah. This was the second game in a row that they played Utah. Kind of one of those rare home-and-home stretches. You don't see that too frequently in the NBA.
No, it was weird. I had to double-check the schedule. I thought my ESPN ScoreCenter app got something wrong. It was very strange.
Yeah, it seemed like a weird matchup. The Warriors didn't disappoint. I mean, they pulled out the win. The offense looked a little bit out of sync. In fact, both Clay and Steph shot collectively below 50%, something we don't see too often.
Yeah, it was a really slow start. I mean, that first quarter was terrible. They the second quarter, though, they kind of picked it up. I think they outscored them by 20 in the second quarter. And Curry caught fire and then kind of passed that on to Clay, who then started hitting some shots after going 1 for 8.
In that second quarter, Curry hit like 3 or 4 shots in a row. He did that human torch mode thing, which is a name and phrase I absolutely fucking hate. But he did get hot, and what I liked, or what I remember thinking is, I really like the noise an opposing arena makes when Curry gets hot, and he makes that like 3rd or 4th shot in a row. It's like tens of thousands of people trying to hush the little yelp of excitement they want to say, and like it's a really specific to basketball sound, and it's something I think you don't get to see amongst a whole lot of players,
And happens especially in a game like Utah where they're coming to see Curry. They're not coming to see the Utah Jazz play the Warriors. So when Curry gives them something special like that, they do kind of have that, I'm not sure how you describe it, a hush, did you say?
A hushed yelp. I thought the yelp was kind of the weird portion of it. It's also specific to players who are known for very specific things. I remember when Vince Carter, when he was still Vince Carter and came to play the Warriors, he had a fairly nasty dunk, and the Warriors crowd made the exact same noise. So when it's Curry, it's not just that he's getting hot. It's not just that they came to see him. It's that they came to see him hit 3-pointers, and they get excited when he actually does it. But we're getting away from the original point. Even though he did get hot, even though he did push it on a Clay, just like we said, they didn't play that well offensively. It was their defense that won this game. And in fact, in some ways, I think it's their defense that's become their calling card. They held Utah to beneath 40%. I think that was like their 6th or 7th team they did to exactly that. And it's weird to say that about a team that we hold synonymous with offense,
No, I think that this team is based around defense, and their success comes from the defense, because their offense is always going to be there, and they have so many options on offense. Even when a guy like Curry's missing, somebody else is going to step up. And so if they don't have the defense locked down, and it showed later in other games we'll talk about, that's when things get real ugly.
We can also throw the whole shit out the window. You remember last year, it was Mike Malone who was getting all the credit for the defensive shift. There's no way it was Coach Jackson. This guy, Mike Malone, must be the new Thibodeau of the West. That's probably why he got the job in Sacramento. Now that Mike Malone is out of the fold, not only have the Warriors defense not gone in the wrong direction, I think they're better. They're actually tougher at picking up their assignments. So we can throw the whole Mike Malone is the key thing right the fuck out the window. The unfortunate highlight of this win was yet another injury to our boy Steph Fragile Curry. This one, thank God, had nothing to do with his lower extremities, no legs, no ankles, nothing like that. This one was a head injury. I think it was in the third quarter. Marvin, I got picked before Chris Paul and never turned into anything. Williams fell on Curry's back and literally slammed Curry's head into the ground with his ass.
An unnecessary fall. The ball was maybe 5 feet away at that point.
Completely unnecessary. Pretty much like you can say about Marvin Williams' entire career. I mean, I don't think that his presence here in the NBA has been necessary, and he certainly showed that again on a useless night. Anyways, Curry did go down. The best indication that it was not that severe of an injury is they actually let Curry talk about the injury after the game. Here's Steph Curry on the fall.
I lost a little bit, went to go reach for it, and next thing I know, I hit the ground pretty hard. I think Marvin landed on me, trying to reach for it too. So, fortunate to play. Thankfully, the guys sealed the deal when I left.
Can you talk to me about how this team's played? You played them back to back now, and I don't think you guys ever looked any better than you did in that second quarter.
Yeah, we're playing well. I mean, sharing the basketball, guys taking open shots, and it's easy to keep that shooting percentage up when you're taking open ones and the ball's moving. But more importantly, our defense is solid. We've had a little trouble in the third quarter, continuing that effort when you have big leads, but to be able to come back and push another run up and continue to play the defense that we've been accustomed to is a good thing for us.
Is that the biggest change from last year, is the improvement on defense?
Well, we showed signs, and obviously we had to battle more injuries last year, so hopefully we all can stay on the floor. But with Andre and Bogut anchoring our defense, and another year for us to really learn the system of what we're trying to accomplish on the defensive end, we're naturally going to be better. But when you add those two guys healthy, your defense does get better.
Steph did miss a game, as we're about to talk about. He has since come back. We know for sure it's not a serious injury, and we also know for sure there's no connection between the head and the ankle. So he didn't go after the much maligned, super concerning ankle injuries. But I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. This guy's fragile, Scotty.
I don't know, just gets caught in weird situations.
Seems to be an injury magnet. None of these things were his fault. The Rubio thing, Rubio went out of his way and landed on his knee. In the Marvin Williams situation, Marvin Williams went out of his way and landed on the guy's head. It's not like he's putting himself in nasty situations. It's just like injuries seem to follow him.
Some guys seem unlucky, like D. Rose going down again.
That is factually correct. Utah is the least important of all these games, so I want to move us on. Let me just give you one last parting shot. I've spent a ton of time on this podcast talking about Harrison Barnes' really impressive athleticism. I stick by that. But when you watch him play now, it's like he's using that athleticism to get off jump shots, not get to the rim. Now, it's working. I'm not upset by it. In fact, I love his awareness and how he can take advantage of his mismatches. But I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Generally speaking, you see high-flying dunks, not somebody using that jumper.
And so do you like him using it for the jumper, or do you want him to be more of a slasher?
I would like to see a little bit more of him slashing. I don't want to see him get away from this jump shot. I think it's a skill that you'd like to see him develop and one he's going to use a lot in his career. But for as long as he is as uber athletic as he is right now, I want to see him dunking on some people still. I mean, and this is obviously overestimating Barnes's potential, but if you look at someone like Jordan, when he still had that super advanced athleticism, he was using it to shit in people's faces. As he got older, he started using the athleticism to do that fall-away jumper and was shooting over people. Kind of the same process that you saw Kobe Bryant do. It's like Barnes is jumping right to the second half of that, and I want to make sure that he develops both. But I thought it was kind of an interesting observation, yeah?
No.
Very, very interesting.
No. I mean, it's... I don't know. I don't see him using his jumper in inappropriate times, so I'm not that concerned with it.
I've got to bring this up. I'm sorry, I'm completely distracted. You have the biggest cut on just the biggest cut on your forehead I've ever seen. It looked like you were just recently fighting with Bogut. What's going on?
I got 2 huge cuts on my forehead
Jesus
and
Christ,
a huge bump. I know. It's embarrassing to even go out in public because you can tell people are looking at you.
I'm trying to go eye contact so it doesn't look like I'm doing that, but you can tell, right? That I'm looking right at you.
You're totally. Everyone I go out, like I ordered a grilled cheese today from this guy at the sandwich shop. I knew he wanted to ask me what the heck happened to your head.
I mean, it does look like you got hit with a 2x4. You don't have to tell us what it was, but was it a 2x4?
No. It was a surfing accident. I wish I could say it involved a shark, fighting off a shark or something like that. But
Let's just call it that. We'll just call it a shark accident.
yeah, it looks that way.
All right. Well, I'm glad you survived the shark accident. It's great to have you back, Scotty. That's fantastic. Incidentally, see a doctor immediately. Let's move on to the Memphis loss, man. They followed up the win in Utah to a loss to the Grizzlies, 88-81 in overtime at home. This was a big one. They entered this game having lost 11 straight to Memphis. These guys are kind of the big bullies on the block. They've pushed us around for quite some time now. This was an opportunity to show them that we were, in fact, a very good team, and we came up short. Now, it should be said, we played without Steph Curry, who did miss a game because of concussion-like symptoms from the fall we just talked about. Just as a random aside, Curry didn't play and he didn't dress, but he did actually show up at the game. If this guy was going through concussion symptoms, he was having light sensitivity and didn't like noise, what the fuck was he doing at the loudest arena in the world?
Where are the trainers on this one?
How could that have possibly happened, right? Like, what the hell's going on there?
Bright lights, loud noise.
Who
This
made that
seems like
decision?
the perfect, the exact opposite of what you would do if you're trying to heal a concussion.
Okay, I'm glad we're in agreement there. Well, Curry didn't play, and despite his absence, the Warriors actually played pretty well in the first half.
I disagree with that. I don't
Really?
think that they played that well in the first half as much as Memphis played like absolute
Terrible.
garbage. Like Memphis, they missed so many easy shots. Shots weren't falling for them. The Warriors played okay, but I think it was more Memphis playing down.
What struck to me is that, because I thought they did play well. In fact, the Warriors built a 44-34 lead at the half, and just holding Memphis to 34 points in the first half, even if they weren't hitting shots, is an accomplishment of itself. The thing that concerns me is that the entire game was played at Memphis's pace. All of it.
Great point.
They walked
Yeah.
at the ball the entire time. We never really opened up the throttle. And because of that, when Memphis did start hitting shots, and I think both of our points are kind of dovetailing, because you're right, they weren't real hot early on. When they did start hitting shots and we were still playing at their pace, it was so easy for them to come back, man. They stormed back. Basically, in the course of the third quarter, I shot off a text message to a friend who was at the game saying, when the Warriors were up like 14, saying, watch out, Memphis is coming back. I have never felt so shitty for being right.
Memphis really knows how to basically muck up the flow of a game.
Yeah.
They're the type of team, kind of like the late 2006 to 2009 Pistons, who would just really mess up a game. It was not a pretty game to watch, nothing enjoyable about it, but they could get you to play their pace, their style. And what also concerned me is, as much as the Warriors were posting up and going inside, which really infuriated me,
Yeah.
they still weren't getting to the free throw line.
At all.
I think they had like 4 free throws
Yeah.
into the third quarter. And to be going inside that much and not even getting to the line is a real problem.
Series of things here. One, the Huddle is continuing to have more and more traditions. I started off by saying big things. We ended off by saying good from you. You also, the third one, you always find some way to reference Detroit. So good for you, man. I have no idea how the hell you fit it in, but I'm really impressed. Two, it wasn't just me who noticed the pace. It wasn't just you who's saying that Memphis dictated it. It was also Coach Jackson. Here is Coach Mark Jackson talking about how the entire game was played at the Memphis's pace and without Stephen Curry.
Well, we wanted to push the pace. I thought that's when the game changed, when we started to, walk it up the floor. Obviously they scored a little bit more. They slowed it down, posting up their bigs, but there's no secret we're at our best when we're pushing the basketball. Well, obviously he's, a big-time player, and not having him hurts us. But next guy stands up. We're a no-excuse basketball team. I thought my guys gave great effort. They defended, they battled, but we fell short.
Was he eating something during that quote?
I promise I didn't insert that in any post-production way. That was the real quote.
Was it like a lollipop or something? Like, what the hell was going on during that quote?
He sounded like the coach from Teen Wolf.
Oh, hell yeah, Coach Bobby Finstock, baby.
Bobby Finstock, who
Hell
was
yes.
always chewing gum.
I mean, I wish we had footage on this. I almost he's either like sipping a beer or just attacking a blow pop or something, like trying to get to that gum in the center. I have no idea what the hell is going on with the quote. His points were well taken. He didn't say anything we didn't already cover, so we don't have to go into it too much in depth. I will point out that as poorly as the Warriors played, even though we played without our best player, even though we played at one of the better teams in the West's pace, we were still able to not only keep this game close, but force overtime. In fact, Iguodala had a shot to win it at regulation. So
yeah, I mean, it's 75-75. Iguodala gets the ball, a rebound with 9 seconds left, starts to take it up the court. Do you call timeout here?
I don't know if I call it timeout, but I would like to see Iguodala pass the fucking ball, man. I love his presence. It's weird talking about him poorly now that we know he's hurt, but it's almost like he was so encouraged by that Thunder shot that he wanted another game winner, like he wanted to make that his identity here, and he didn't cough it up and ended up with this terrible shot at the buzzer.
Yeah, I had the exact same reaction as you. I totally agree with Jackson's call not to call a timeout.
Yeah.
Because Memphis is a team, you don't want them having time to set up their defense. That's worst case scenario.
And we're a transition team.
And
we should be able to take advantage of that.
Exactly. So I agree with that, but you got to pass that ball. I mean, the Memphis was so out of position.
Right.
Harrison Barnes was wide open on the right side of the court. Work it around. You have 9 seconds. That's a lot of time.
And at that point, all of the momentum was with Memphis. They had come storming back. It was the type of thing that if we go into overtime, this game is fucking over anyways. Let's see if we can prevent that from happening. Last 2 thoughts, and then let's move on. One good, one bad. Let's start with the bad. Tayshaun Prince, your old boy from Detroit, made this thing even more difficult because even though he was totally invisible throughout the entire game, he hit 2 big shots down the stretch, and there's something that's really frustrating about seeing a corpse basically put you in the ground to end a game. So fuck you, Tayshaun Prince. 2, this one's good. Draymond Green hasn't just lost weight. He has made himself into a real basketball player. Kent Bazemore has gone the exact opposite direction. We don't have to spend time taking too many shots at him. But Draymond isn't just a defender, isn't just a good off-ball rebounder. He is now a fairly reliable three-point shooter and can move the ball pretty well. I've been really impressed with this play.
Yeah, he is doing it all. I can't believe that his jump shot has stayed around. He's shooting over 40% from the 3. And we didn't talk about it in the Jazz game, but there was a point actually where he was playing center.
Yeah.
That's how versatile
and
he is. Yeah.
Last take. Marc Gasol killed us like he always does. Ended up with 18, 11, and 4 blocks. That's not why I'm bringing him up, Scotty. This is kind of a funeral for me. As you guys know, I selected Marc Gasol in the first round of my fantasy basketball playoffs. I was so upset by it then. I am catatonic now. After this game, Gasol got hurt in the San Antonio game somewhere in the second quarter. I think he tore his MCL. He's going to be out 6 weeks. We don't have to feel sorry for Marc Gasol. I'm pointing this out just as another indication of how crazy and neurotic I am. Fantasy, right now, my relationship's going really well. Eric and I are fine. My work is going pretty well. I feel really good about it. I have so much fun doing this podcast with you. I spent this last weekend at least 85% of my time thinking about a giant 7-foot Spaniard who couldn't pull me out of a lineup of 1. There has got to be...
you have no control over.
No control over nothing. It's not even my fault. And I really,
Although you did draft him, but...
I will fight you right now. I will add another cut to your forehead. I don't know why it is I take these injuries so hard, so personally, and cannot get above them. But I think this fantasy thing cannot be good.
Well, here's why. I'll tell you exactly why. It's because what the end result is, you end up getting beat by me 7-2, and that's really it's frustrating for you.
It was ridiculous.
It hurts to lose, and that's the ultimate outcome.
That part didn't hurt because you had 14 more people play than me this week. Can you imagine signing up for fantasy football? You hop up on Sunday and you look at the matchup page, and the other person has 14 more people playing. Would you play in that?
Yeah. So it was 7-2. That was the final of the categories.
Yeah, I actually think you should be a little bit embarrassed that you didn't get a full sweep with that many more people.
Look, I had injuries too. I had guys like James Anderson playing. Nobody's heard of him.
The fact that you drafted shitbird losers can't be held against me. All I can tell you is that you had an undeniable, unbelievable advantage that is definitely bothering me, and it did make it worse with Gasol out.
Yep, scoreboard.
Let's go to L.A. They followed up this loss with yet another one, this in Los Angeles against the Lakers. A loss made this much worse because I spent so much time a couple weeks ago saying how terrible the Lakers were, reading off their starting lineup.
That's all I was thinking about as this game proceeded. I was like, Bram's going to have to really kind of... I don't really know.
Wow, Jesus, jumped right into that sentence. You were so fired up about that 7-2 that you came out on fire and then couldn't finish out your thought. One of the most concerning portions about that is that we are quickly establishing a Huddle jinx. I think maybe we should stop having these overarching takes, because so far they've taken down Jermaine O'Neal, they hurt Tony Douglas, and they made us lose to Los Angeles. So maybe I'll keep some of these opinions to myself. Another game that they played without Curry, and you could certainly tell it. They looked lost and out of sync. I don't think there's any question anymore. He is, in fact, the most important piece to this team. Not Bogut, not Iguodala, not anybody but Stephen Curry. As quick proof of that, the Warriors are 8-3 and average 107.3 points with him playing. They are 0-3 and average 83.3 points with him not. He is the engine that makes this team go, and without him, we literally do not have an offense.
No, the floor isn't spaced the same. The ball doesn't move as freely. The tempo on offense, it kind of really slows down, and guys aren't being as unselfish as they used to be. It's a huge difference.
And it's not like we suddenly transition and become a half-court team. We just aren't running anymore. We become a half-court team, and then our offense looks terrible because we can't execute in the half-court, and that was certainly true throughout this game. One of the nasty downsides to it, and I don't know if you can draw a direct correlation, but I'm going to, is that with Steph out, we asked Iguodala to do everything. Bring up the ball, guard every position, be in every passing lane. As a result, he overextends himself, and he hurts his hamstring terribly in the third.
That was the real turning point in this game. The score was tied. It's in the third quarter, late in the third.
It was 63-63.
63-63, and Iguodala's kind of running down, trying to get a loose ball, and just you can see him grab his hamstring, and he says he heard a pop, I think.
Yeah, I got the quote right here. I couldn't pull it off audio. I guess he didn't actually give it to a tape recorder. It just gave it to a reporter. But here's what it says. Quote, "Normally I can just run it off and it will go away. But once I heard the pop, I knew it was serious. This one kind of worries me. I'll take it seriously. My body has been pretty good at taking care of me, so I'll be back sooner than people think. But you hear that word pop while talking about a hamstring, and nothing good is associated with that."
Oh, yeah. I mean, this one, and the hamstring itself is a real scary injury, in my opinion, because it's one of those that lingers forever. And it's one that you think is back to healthy. When you're walking around, you won't feel it.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start running again, it can just give out on you right then and there. And you're back to square one of rehab.
And there's no possible way to know how long this is going to keep him out, because the Warriors are pulling the whole CIA secretive move with it. They're saying he's out indefinitely. A random aside, Iguodala is also on my fantasy team, so I was super happy this weekend. Yeah, things went really well for Team Run JMV.
That's tough. But going back to the Lakers game, the Lakers then ended that quarter on a 12-0 run. So the difference when having Iguodala and not having him was huge. And they went on to lose the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was the only person who was somewhat making up for Steph's absence. He was the one guy who was creating a little bit of spacing problems and getting into the lane. Once we lost him, we saw the true dysfunction that happens without either of their playmakers. Last take for me on this game was Kobe Bryant. He did not play. There was some talk that he might return from the Achilles rupture. He didn't. In fact, he didn't even practice the day before, but he was able to offer this quote.
Kobe, yeah, he's real with the flow. Kick in the door, waving the flow. All you heard was stop, can't take the hits no more. Been the flow. All you heard was stop, can't take the hits no more. Ha, didn't know I had your block on SWAT.
I can't get enough of that. I mean, I just can't get it. Even when we lose, I cannot get enough of that.
It's so, oh my God, it's just unbelievable that somebody allowed that guy to record it, and he's okay with having that out there in the world.
What you know is that anytime he hears it, he nods his head and thinks to himself, I'm amazing at that as well.
He's definitely proud of it.
So proud of it. Let's move on to our final game, this being the last loss, and it was to Portland. Portland came in crazy hot. I think they had won 9 straight. They've now won 10. They're one of the surprise teams of this early NBA season. And to make matters worse, it was one of the sleeved jersey nights because this game was played on a Saturday night. They actually pumped out the sleeved jerseys. Last logistical point, I had an opportunity to go to this game. Justin, trapped in Golden State, invited me. Unfortunately, because of fucking work conflicts, I ended up not being able to go. But on the off chance that he's listening, Justin, appreciate the offer, man. Maybe we'll make that happen in the future. Thanks
for the invite, Justin.
I told him not to invite you. He had an extra one. In fact, I think he just invited like a homeless man, Steph came back and his presence was obvious. In fact, a lot like the Memphis game, the Warriors looked good through portions of this. The offense was moving. They had a little bit of transition. And more than anything, Clay was unstoppable, ended up with 30 points. on 10 to 13 shooting before fouling out. Did you see his face, by the way? After Clay fouled out, they kept showing him, and it was like someone had just shot his puppy and like punched his mother in the face. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody take it that hard.
Well, he should, because there were so many BS calls in this game, and that was one of them. I'd be super upset too if I was having that type of good game and you get fouled out on a BS play like that.
Wasn't it an offensive call too? Wasn't it an offensive foul that he got thrown out on?
Yeah, it was like, I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah,
like, it really was. It was terrible. I thought there was just way too many ticky-tack stuff throughout the whole game.
I agree. And the War looked good. Their defense looked great. They were holding them to under 40%. It's becoming our calling card. And going into the third, I thought this was going to be kind of a coasted out win. No problem at all. Then a fight erupts. More specifically, Andrew, he of the super slightly dirty moves the entire game, which I love, Bogut, was tangled up with a guy named Joel Friedland.
Never heard of the guy.
Never heard of fucking Joel Friedland.
How has Portland won 10 straight with Joe Friedland in the game?
Phenomenal question. In this instance, Friedland gets tangled up with Bogut's right arm, the one that's been surgically repaired and one I bet you he's a little bit worried about. Bogut gets protective of it and uses his left arm to kind of give him a little arm shiv and almost an elbow. Friedland wants no part of it, basically runs out of the scene, and then Mo Williams comes back in, reignites the entire fight. They push, shove, find their way in front of the Warriors bench, and then Draymond Green, who rumor has it was talking shit with Wesley Matthews, got angry and also enters the fray. No punches thrown, just general pushing. Couple of things.
There's
One,
kind of some open hand slaps.
Mo Williams came in and hit Bogut on the side of his face with an open hand left. So I guess there's that. Where the over-under on the fights for the season is already over, so I guess we set that too low. And there's been some suspensions at the game. Mo Williams, Wesley Matthews gets ejected after the game.
And
Mo
Draymond
Williams,
Green.
Oh, Draymond Green as well, you're right. After the game, I think it was Draymond and Bogut are getting a one-game suspension. I got that right?
I don't know about Draymond. I haven't checked that.
It was just Bogut and Mo Williams. A couple of things on the fight. One, I was watching this game on the TV. We had the Barnett feed, which I was fired up about.
Yeah.
And at some point, he says, quote, I don't know why they don't just let the big guys handle it. We don't need any of this Haystack Calhoun. Now, I don't know who the hell Haystack Calhoun is, but I've been smiling about that line for about 3 days now, and even just reading it now, just one more reason I'm going to miss Barnett so much.
I thought you were going to bring up when the fight breaks out, he keeps screaming, "Get Curry out of there!
Yeah.
Get Curry out of there! Somebody's got to find Curry and get him out of there."
That is exactly what he said, and then led into the Haystack Calhoun line. So for any of you little guys out there who are thinking about fighting, none of that Haystack Calhoun stuff, man. You better follow Barnett's line of advice.
This fight got a little interesting because it did spill over into not only the Warriors bench, but also the first row in the stands.
Yep.
So you kind of were wondering, is this going to be a mouse in a pow situation? It had that potential.
They had a shot of Marshawn Lynch sitting in the front row,
Oh,
not by
yeah.
where it went, but he was there. I was really hoping he might get involved. I mean, he's from Oakland, beast mode. In fact, he was wearing a beast mode sweatshirt.
Yeah, I saw that.
That really
Yeah.
entertained me, wearing your own sweatshirt. There's something interesting about that, but they wanted no piece of Marshawn, I guarantee you that. Neither did Mo Williams, by the way. I thought of Austin Powers. I mean, Bogut could eat Mo Williams. I was thinking of the whole get in my belly thing, so that thing was totally disingenuous. Worst part about the fight is that it seemingly motivated Portland. At that point, Wesley Matthews was their best player by far. He had 23 points and 8 of 9 shooting. He gets thrown out, and instead of falling apart, the team bands together with it. They come storming back and ultimately beat the Warriors. Here's Wesley Matthews about how the fight motivated his team.
That inspired us, and we got better from it. We got stronger from it. Mo and I were continuing to cheer, and they couldn't hear us. We were continuing to cheer, and they rose to the occasion and played well.
I hate this guy's face and his voice.
Continuing to cheer from the locker room?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
What difference did that make?
Apparently it made a huge difference because they roll off to the win. Let's not go through the details of it. Instead, let me ask you this. At the end of the last podcast, we had rattled off 3 straight wins, and I was calling them contenders for the 800th time in this early season. Now they've lost 3 straight, and they're looking at some pretty considerable injuries. Should we be worried about this team?
I think definitely you should be worried because these injuries are real, and they're a big concern because we haven't even talked about, Kuzmic.
Yep.
got injured his hand. So he's out. I mean,
Jermaine O'Neal hasn't been playing.
Jermaine O'Neal hasn't been playing. Festus, you haven't even heard anything about him. And this bench has shown that they are terrible. Spates is awful.
Yep.
He's providing nothing. And Bogut can't keep playing all these minutes. He's playing great, but he can't keep all these minutes up. So, I mean, I am definitely very concerned.
I'm going to echo your concern and give you a separate reason before we move on to the video games. I've been a little concerned about coaching. This team can run in the open court. They have no problem creating spacing, and when they're hitting their shots and moving at a quick pace, they're great. They also run amazing inbound plays. In fact, I think some of the best in the league. They're taking it out. They, generally speaking, get an open shot. What they can't do is run a half-court set to save their life. Against Memphis, against Portland, against Los Angeles, every time it slowed down, they ended up having a one-pass, one-shot set where they'd pass it one time and then someone would barrel their way into the lane and miss it. If they are going to be successful in an environment like the playoffs where every possession, generally speaking, comes down to a half-court set, they're going to have to get a damn sight better than what they've been showing here.
And I think that they have had some good plays in the half court in the past where they have some like double down screens and things like that when they have their marquee players in the game. But when they don't, then their half court seems to rely on these isolation plays where they'll just either go to like Klay Thompson in the post
or Harrison Barnes,
Barnes, and it's all one-on-one. It's just way too much one-on-one.
Definitely, and it's generally a fall-away jumper. So they're going to have to address that maybe when they have a full complement of their players. We won't be talking about these things, but I'd be lying to you to say that I wasn't a little bit concerned. I'm not going to take away their contender status. We still have the haymakers opportunity. I mean, if we hit all of our three-point shots, we have a chance against any team, but they need to solidify the other offense as well. All right, less depressing topic. One I am fired up to talk about. What the hell, baby, where we're going to figure out the top 5 hoop video games of all time. Scotty, I suggest we do this like we did the top 5 Warriors point guards. Let's go through the 5 nominees, drop our thoughts on them, then at the end, you and I will give our separate rankings 1 through 5. Sound good?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Here are the nominees. I'll just list them out and then we'll go through them. Double Dribble, old school Nintendo game I used to love. NBA Jams. For this one, let's focus on the arcade version. I think that's kind of your definitive move. NBA Live 95. The Bulls versus Lakers. And then finally the 2K series. You don't have to take one on its own. 2K all the way. Let's start with Double Dribble. Were you a Nintendo owner?
Yeah, I was a big Nintendo guy. Nintendo through and through.
This is one of my first and favorite games of all time. There's a bunch of random things I associate with it, starting with that thing where you just turned on the thing and it said double dribble. Hell of weird. Like that's just in my head nonstop.
Double dribble.
No, this was just a classic. I mean, just a real classic. My favorite part of this was I'd often play it with this one friend, and if you know the real ins and outs of the game, maybe you got Nintendo Power back in the day that you used to read.
Non-stoppable shot?
There was a couple different non-stoppable shots. So they had these different like hot spots where if you released it from a certain point
it's good.
on the court, then it was like automatic. And so one of them was actually like a shot from 3/4 of the court.
Good
I mean,
knowledge.
you were way back on the other guy's free throw line, and for some reason, he called the play Tropicana. And so he'd just go Tropicana and then shoot it from that other three-point line. Now, the best part is it takes the ball so long to travel, and it makes it sound like boo.
Yeah, sure.
And so he's just yelling like Tropicana the whole time.
And then it says 3-point goal when it goes in. I liked the opening scene. So you press start, starts up, and they play the national anthem, and they show all these fake fans slowly going into the arena. I thought that was mind-blowing graphically. I liked the dunk sequences, where if you held onto the ball and then floated towards it, they'd have like a slow-motion dunk sequence. There was only like 2 or 3 they showed. It was always the reverse that I thought was just amazing and like technologically beyond anything I ever could have imagined. And then the last thing I really liked about it is that the shoot button, when you pressed it, the guy would jump. When you let go of it, he would actually shoot. Well, you could press it and do like 360s in the air before letting it go. So you could do like that 360 jump shot.
This game had so many quirks to it and was not really the flawless. You could tell it was early on in the basketball game development world.
They had like 4 teams. It was like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Boston or something. They had the worst halftime sequence of all time. But when I think video games and I think basketball, this was my first and one of my best memories. Let's move on, man. Tell me about NBA Jams.
NBA Jam, another great, just classic. And probably my favorite game. I'll kind of ruin the ending. That's going to be number one for me.
Did you play this one in the arcade or just at the house?
I played sometime at the arcade, but definitely I was more of a house guy on the NBA Jam. One of an article came out recently by the guy who was the designer of this game.
Yeah.
And they asked him a bunch of questions, one of which was, did Scottie Pippen get worse in late game situations in that game?
Yeah.
And he answered honestly, which I appreciate, and said, yes, I was a Pistons fan, and I programmed the game where Pippen would average a miss. Ultimately, like the number of times you play with him down the stretch, on average, he would brick it.
I can't speak intelligently about the Scottie Pippen specific cheating, but I can speak very intelligently on the super shady NBA Jams cheating. Anybody who has ever played this game can immediately attest that there's a certain lead that you can build up, probably about 15, 16 points, before the computer comes storming back in the shadiest bullshit fashion. They do that move where you pass the ball in, and then they immediately push you over and steal the ball.
Yeah, you didn't have a chance.
There's nothing. There's nobody on earth. The Flash didn't have hand-eye coordination fast enough to be able to avoid that, which I thought was just absolute bullshit. The thing, I used to play this thing in an arcade. In fact, when we weren't practicing from hoop, there was an arcade a bus trip away from school that I used to go to all the time. And one of my favorite things is go in there, you put in your money, you do like the big head code or whatever to show everybody that you were good, and then the people around you would see what your record was. You know, so like I spent so much goddamn money on this game, but it was always worth it because I thought I impressed complete strangers with my amazing records. And then if you wanted to go big time, you could pull out one of those secret players, go Bill Clinton on their ass or something, and hit like nonstop shots. This one also is not without its iconic sound effects. Certainly, "He's on Fire" is about as well known in video game talk as anything else.
He's on fire!
Well, not just the phrase "he's on fire," but also that concept that they put into a game what we all want, which is
so awesome.
Is that feeling of being in the zone and just being able to hit any shot, no
No,
matter
that's
how
good.
ridiculous it is.
You could goaltend, it didn't mean for shit. Or the rare instance where you broke the backboard. I don't know like what was more satisfying than breaking the backboard, but that was just fantastic. This might be my favorite.
Who was your
game as
team?
well. I depended on when. I guess since we're talking about the arcade, it was Charlotte, and I went with Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson because Larry could kind of shoot the three, and I could always throw the alley to Alonzo. Although Golden State was pretty goddamn good too.
Yeah, they did have a good squad. Now, I think you're looking for a three-point shooter combined with like a solid dunker.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking offensively now. The reverse on defense, you want the guy to have good steals and be
a
able to
big
block.
blocker. Yeah.
So I actually went Starks and Ewing.
Oh, interesting. Not a bad combo. Not a bad combo. And let the record reflect that Scotty and I continue to play this game. We've played the Xbox 360 version to great success.
Yes,
in fact,
absolutely.
And there are people out there who think that they can handle our 2-on-2 stylings and NBA jams. Hit us up at warriorshuddle.com and issue the challenge, or warriorshuddle@gmail.com, because we will beat your ass. Let's move on, man. Live 95. The Live series is since dead. Basically, they tried to come back this year with the launch of the new Symptoms. Apparently, it is terrible. There was a time when Live 95 specifically, but Live was the go-to game to buy. This was kind of the pinnacle of their success. I remember loving this game. They included trades for the first time when you played the full franchise, and they added the fast break, something that you couldn't really do in other games. I went deep in this game. I remember writing fake articles in my head. Like, I'd play as the Warriors, play for a full year, and like after games, after I won, I'd sit back and like sit in my seat and write like, the Warriors looked really good tonight, led by Chris Mullin. He had a tough time in the third quarter, but was able to get over it. That's the kind of loser obsession I brought to this game, and I loved it.
Yeah, that is on another level of complete loser. But
Thanks, Scotty.
I will say, like, this was the most realistic basketball game at that time, and
At that time or ever.
Yeah, I mean, there was something just real great about that. They had in-game live stats.
Yep.
Like you do a block, and then they're like, okay, you've done 3 blocks so far. I told you at the beginning of this, I was a Nintendo guy. I didn't have Sega, and so Live 95 has a kind of a dark place in my heart because I'd go over to my friend's house who had Sega, and this dude had been playing the game for just nonstop, and I'd come over and just always get just destroyed. And so I never really liked this game that much.
One of the downsides of the sports video games is it can create animosity between friends in a heartbeat. I always thought Madden was the worst. You open up a 21-point Madden in the first half, you've got a fight on your hands probably by the fourth quarter. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, something really ugly. So my condolences that somebody beat your ass in Live 95. I was always pretty goddamn good. I remember talking a lot of shit in that game.
Yeah, I had a couple of moments where I just turned the power off second quarter.
You were that guy? You piece of shit. I hated that guy. Finish it out. Last thought on Live 95, they had an unbelievable Warriors team. It starred Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, Latrell Sprewell, Chris Webber, and Billy O. They could all shoot, they could all run, and it led to, I mean, at the time, the Warriors were kind of good, but not great. So I got to build out my entire fantasy of them winning championships. And along with my sports writing for every game, it was like going through a real season, man. I loved it.
And looking back now, the graphics on this are so crappy.
Terrible. They're terrible. Second to last, Bulls versus Lakers. This is the one right before it became live. That they used to call it after the teams that played in the finals the year before. The reason I'm bringing this one up is that this is the one I remember with the special moves. They had the champion took the ball and shot from a specific portion of the court with a specific player. It would do a special move. So Chambers did like this double clutch dunk from the top of the key. Barkley did this gorilla dunk. Jordan did your favorite air reverse where he went up with the left and switched over with the right. And I always remember just having my mind blown that they had actually put these things in
They had
there.
Jordan in this?
They did.
Like
Yeah.
actual Jordan, not just like 23?
Actual Jordan, yeah. Like one of the last times that Jordan was featured. And because it actually featured his move, too.
Yeah, because I hated the Bulls so much back then
Yeah.
that I would never have even considered playing with Jordan, so I never even knew.
I just don't even understand that at all. Jordan was my idol at that point. Beyond what we've already said about the other games, this one didn't add that much. It was really just the special moves that caught my eye. Leading us to the 2K series. 2K has actually been out a lot longer than people give it credit for. It became super popular probably around 2K11, 2K12. Now it is the big dog on the block, but there was a just straightforward 2K basketball that I think featured Allen Iverson on the cover. At this stage, it is the go-to game. Phenomenal graphics. In fact, there's a thing called the uncanny valley. They say that when video games didn't look like the real people, then you never really thought that they looked strange. Point of reference, you looked at Madden, if it looked even remotely close like a player, you just accepted it in like Madden 98. Now they are so close. You know, they've brought the graphics along so far that when something looks off, it looks crazy off because everything else looks so good. So people like Chris Kaman in 2K11 is the scariest, like shadiest person you've ever seen. So there's a bunch of people in what they call the uncanny valley. They almost look like them, but they look a little bit off. That's not why I brought up the game. Here's why I did. The actual gameplay in this thing is phenomenal. I always thought the ball movement mimics a real game unlike anything else. You can hit a shot where it'll bounce all the way around the rim and actually go in. I always enjoyed that. And more than that, this one really perfected the create a player thing. You could create a guy, give him a name, give him stats, and then create his looks as well, and then unleash him into the league. I used to go huge. I'd buy this game, create everybody I knew, and then do a fake draft and fill these teams up basically with my friends. So I had an entire league of people who I knew every single week. I loved it.
These are all great concepts and great ideas. What they should do is limit the number of knobs and buttons on the controllers. I don't know anything about the 2K series because I had to bow out of video games after they started adding like 2 R1s and R2s and 3 joysticks and 5 buttons. I just need a simple A, B. Even the Sega Genesis controller got too complex for me.
Do you think they should have limited real basketball to just passing and shooting? I mean, you've got to have
these
options
are
like that.
insane. Like, in order to do a guy's signature move now, you have to do like 5 different things at once. It's out of control.
You know,
so.
you've recently suffered a major head injury, so maybe that's why you're not picking up these controllers. I can tell you that, in fact, they are not that difficult and are mostly played by 6-year-olds.
No, I got nothing to add on these games because I just had to bow out.
Well, you can still add your rankings. Give them to me. Why don't you go reverse?
So, number 5, I'll go the 2K series. 4, Bulls, Lakers. 3, probably go Live 95. 2, Double Dribble. 1, NBA Jams.
All right. I go, kills me to say it, but 5, Bulls, Lakers. 4, NBA Live 95, but I feel like I'm like cheating on an old friend by saying that. 3, 2K. 2, this This is hurting me. Double dribble, one NBA James.
Yeah, no,
I mean, what else can you do?
Yeah,
man?
exactly.
NBA Jams was just such a fantastic
it's so
game.
it's so good. Another tidbit from that article. Shaq loved the game so much that he bought 2 arcade versions of it. This is back in the day when he was playing.
Yeah.
He kept one in his house. He actually had the other one shipped around to different hotels on the road so that the team could play it while traveling.
That's badass. I also remember, although I don't know if it was from that article or not, but Jordan was not featured in the game. And once it took off and got so huge, Jordan actually had a arcade game made for him that did feature his likeness in it. And
That's
there's
awesome.
there's not a whole lot of games that boast that kind of effect on its players. Let me give you a quick quote before we are out of here. Alex Rodriguez, he of Yankee fame and has recently been in the news for a lot of nasty things, was once asked about the benefits of seeing a therapist. And he said, therapy can be a good thing. It can be really therapeutic. Love hanging out with you guys. It is so much fun every week. We appreciate it so much. Please remember you can find us on Twitter, Warriors Huddle, Gmail, warriorshuddle@gmail.com. Our website is letsgowarriors.com, and you can find us on iTunes at Warriors Huddle, where you can rate us and subscribe to us, either of which we'd really appreciate. Great kicking it. We'll see you guys next week.
He's on fire! Head fake! Up downtown!
Good.